Oh man. And Justin is a loser, says Donald Trump. Where's the lie? Where's the lie? Ruby Dhalla is out. And that's interesting. We're going to examine that. It'll be early in the show. We're looking at that. There's a whole lot of stuff. She's being kicked out for foreign interference, but her and Mark Carney share some interesting and eyebrow raising donations. So that's weird. Very, very strange. So we're going to look at all of that. Epstein list is going to be released. It is on the Pam Bondi's desk at this point in time. So it is going to get released, but the practicality of it is I have no idea how it's going to be released. So we have to talk about that, because if you're going to release something like the Epstein list, what's stopping you from releasing a list of your political enemies, right? Like, with the list has to be maybe arrests, crimes that go along with it, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole thing is, it's very, very interesting. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't release the list and know who was so closely associated with Mr. Epstein, et cetera, because of, the child rape and stuff. That's pretty important. However, again, what's stopping anybody who has control of this situation to release a list of political enemies or whoever else they want to, have the public hate for a while? It's a dirty trick, but politics is full of dirty tricks, right? If I can conceive of it, other people can conceive of it. Okay. So anyway, we'll talk about that. Ottawa is ending funding of searches for unmarked graves. Do you know why? Because no bones have been found, no remains have been found, and the whole thing is actually just a social engineering project to try and replace Thanksgiving with Repentance Day, or Lies Day. That's all it is. Out of control egg situation, says the food professor. We're going to look at the egg situation in Canada, in the United States, and Mexico. And we're going to compare. Canada's doing second best, Mexico's doing the best, and the United States has got bird flu-itis, right? And so they just need some chicken soup. Dr. Hoffe update, and so much more. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. And I feel like, there's often times where I feel like I can't get everything. There's so many things going on that I just can't possibly tell you everything that's going on. So I have story threads that I follow and I give you updates on, and I try and cover the big news. I try and cover the things that I think are interesting from a Canadian perspective. But like anything, like I can't do it all. There's so much stuff going on. Like, there are people who are going deep on research about Mark Carney's donations. There are people who are, doing deep dives on certain court cases and like Canadian true crime mixed with politics and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, yeah, I should cover that case, or I should cover that more in depth, or I should tell you more about that. But my show is more of a leaping off point. Like, these are interesting things that are going on, and it's head spinning what all is going on, because it's crazy. There's so many things. And if you want more information, go find the more information. Please be my guest. And if I get something wrong, please tell me, because like I said, I'm doing kind of a 30,000 foot, like, holy cow, look at all the stuff that's going on. Right? And not all of it is really, really well fleshed out. If something bears more explanation, I do my best to explain it and flesh it out a bit more. I do my best to make it a little bit funny, because what's going on is anything but funny, right? But like, I thought the same in 2008 when I was watching The Daily Show and The Colbert Report, and I laughed my way through it. But at the same time, I was like, there's some serious stuff going on. And that serious stuff really didn't start getting addressed until Donald Trump started addressing it yesterday, like, honestly. So it's interesting, right? So, but awareness is like, knowing is half the battle, right? So there you go. This is a jumping off point. And so I don't know. I hope that's helpful. I've been doing this for years, so I think it is. But anyway, speaking of robots with guns on their heads, here is the Neo Gamma. And this is a 37-second commercial. And it ends with the robot sitting down. And I think that's the funniest image ever. Like, if you are at work, man, like you got to work. What are you doing sitting down, robot? Like, holy smoke, man. I've got things that you could do. Like, there's some dishes that need washing and things like that. But this whole commercial, I don't know that I could go to sleep in my house unless that's a Sentry bot, and it's, and the gun on its head is aimed at any potential threats. And I want to make sure that it's not going to identify me as a threat to me ever for any reason, right? And sometimes on my Telegram channel, I appear to post in there. So if they can do that on my Telegram channel, can they do that to my Terminator robot? Here is the Neo Gamma, and it's 37 seconds, but we're watching it. Here you go. It's a humanoid robot that does all your chores and stuff. Here we go.
Yeah, it's super funny.
Right there. How's this? Perfect.
hard day's work, right? You guys eat dinner. I'll just sit over here on the couch looking, not sad, but not happy either. I don't know. I'm just going to sit here. Humanoid robots for people who love slavery, but don't like the moral conundrum, right? Like, it's ridiculous. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I mean, again, if you own a Tim Hortons and this thing can be trained to do Tim Hortons, a lot of people try and sell AI like, oh, it'll do all the things for you. It can schedule things for you. It can check your work, probably. It can do some spreadsheet magic, sure, but it can't like replace you, probably, most of the time. Not yet, anyway. And so like it's very, very interesting that they're selling this as, it'll do your dishes and it'll bring over a kettle for you and pour your coffee in the morning and stuff. I feel like they're overselling it, but it's a product and we're used to that, right? And sometimes you get a product and you buy it and it's like P90X, right? And you're like, I'm going to look like Tony Horton, right? And then all of a sudden you don't. You just still look like you. And you're like, oh man, right? My arms are sore. So maybe the robot will do what they say it's going to do, but maybe your arms will just be sore and you'll look like you still. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about politics, tariffs, Donald Trump, and the rest. And here's Donald Trump saying, you know who's a loser? Justin Trudeau's a loser. He's talking about the hockey game, but he transcends the hockey game. Here we go.
We won the first game. The second game was a great game. It could have gone either way. Justin's a loser, always has been. And, he's just a guy that really doesn't, I think he's done a very bad job for Canada. He's taken it radical left. Justin's sort of a nice guy, but he's a loser.
That's the kind of thing that if I had heard that a year ago, I would have said, oh, that's AI speech. But courtesy Fox News, okay? Like this is a Fox News call in. This is, as far as I understand it, as real as it gets, okay? Justin Trudeau's a loser, right from Donald Trump. It's true. He's not wrong. Justin Trudeau's a loser. Juno News says, RCMP announced the discovery of yet another suspected clandestine drug lab as Canada ramps up efforts to combat fentanyl trafficking. Somebody was saying, do you think that they're cooking any of this stuff in the universities across the country, or do you think they're just using these kind of rural fentanyl cooking labs? And probably, like, why not both? And further, these things are expensive to set up, and money's really no object. But if they can arrest somebody and then leave the infrastructure in place, I feel like that's happening. Like, I don't know exactly what the oversight looks like, but I know in BC, the government was creating fentanyl supply and giving it over to criminals to distribute. So that kind of gives me an indication on how secure this would all be. Like, oh, we're just going to put up a padlock and make sure that nobody uses this anymore. And then 3 days later, the security's gone and the padlock gets cut. And, oh my gosh, did you know the drug lab was back in use, right? Or maybe they go and they take it and they move it somewhere. But I feel like this stuff is retained for the next fall guy, and when the first fall guy gets arrested and then released on bail and he goes back to whatever country he's from, then the next fall guy comes in and takes up his position with all of his old equipment, right? Like I feel like this is a system that they've optimized, right, for cost and things like that. They look at it like a business, right? No sense in wasting money when we've got all the equipment here. It's just sitting behind that, in that cop shop there. We'll pay off the cops and get the equipment back or whatever, however they can do it. Doug Ford is trying to show that he's taking this whole thing seriously. Again, I think I would appoint my own fentanyl czar, border czar, whatever you want to call it. But Doug Ford says Operation Deterrence continues to deliver results at our border. 14.25 kilograms of fentanyl was seized. 41 illegal firearms were seized. 628 kilograms of cocaine seized. 8 stolen vehicles recovered. 8 illegal border crossers intercepted. In total, 730. What happens to the illegal border crossers? Where are they sent? Because if they're sent to a hotel in Niagara Falls, I have a problem with that. In total, 736 charges have been laid after 12,000 dedicated patrol hours and nearly 13,000 trucks inspected. So interesting. Zachary says, thank you, President Trump, for giving our politicians a kick in the ass. It's still not enough. It's still not even close to enough. We are in a situation where, Ruby Dhalla has been removed from the Liberal leadership race, which I predicted, and I think anybody watching this at all has said, well, she's too sane, and the policies she's pushing are too different than what the Liberals stand for now. They're not going to tolerate her. If she starts getting fire, if she starts winning, they're going to just remove her. And I've said that for weeks. I don't think I've repeatedly said it, but I have absolutely said it. House of Commons staffer is reporting Liberal insiders leaked the news to CBC before notifying the candidate. Wow. Ruby Dhalla is responding to this CBC headline. Ruby Dhalla kicked out of Liberal leadership race. She says, CBC News, do you know something I don't? Very, very interesting. Candidate faces 12 allegations of breaching party rules. Ruby Dhalla says, I've just seen the CBC News report alleging financial irregularities in my campaign. My response is simple. These allegations are fabricated, fictitious, and fake, and yet another attempt by unknown sources to have me removed from the debate and the ballot. A couple used their joint account credit card to make 2 donations for both the husband and the wife. This is entirely legal. The party withheld their donations while the required attestations were completed. Then these were then submitted to Elections Canada. In the hundreds of donations that were received, this occurred 6 times. This is not a violation. My campaign bears no responsibility for the donations of hardworking Canadians who believe in my campaign and my vision for Canada, another fabricated violation. Donors donated directly to the campaign instead of using a customized link. The campaign refunded the donation and asked the donors to resubmit them via the customized link. These donations estimated $21,000. This was not a violation, yet another fake, false, and fabricated allegation designed to keep me from the ballot. So Ruby is fighting this, but I don't think that she can fight this. She's just been disqualified from the leadership race, and I don't know that there's any kind of expedited way to fix it for her. So, and what are you going to do, right? The Liberals can do whatever they want with their leadership race, I guess. It just decides the next Prime Minister of Canada. Here's Ruby Dhalla again talking about what's going on. This isn't the whole clip, but it's about a minute out of it. Here we go.
Well, I think it speaks to the state of the Liberal Party of Canada that a candidate who is running to become leader of the party, who is running to become prime minister in our country, is finding out that she has been disqualified on air from an email that the media outlet that she is interviewing with has received. So it is very alarming and very shocking. It is certainly not surprising, because I think the Liberal Party of Canada was seeing exactly what our internal polls are telling us, that my campaign and my team, we were neck to neck with a front runner in the race. They did not want me to go on to that debate stage in Montreal. They certainly did not want me on that ballot. And the Liberal Party of Canada wanted to complete the coronation of Mark Carney. All of the allegations that you have mentioned have been, that you have spoken about, they are completely false. They are fabricated.
There you go. So, as I said, it's just a little clip out of it, but she's categorically denying all of this stuff. And she says further, Tom Quiggin is responding to this. He says the selection process of Mark Carney continues. And Ruby says, I have just been informed by the Liberal Party of Canada that I have been disqualified from the leadership race. This decision is both shocking and deeply disappointing, especially since it was leaked to the media. The allegations that the party have used against me are false and fabricated. The tactics used to remove me from this race only confirm what we already knew. Our message was resonating. We were winning, and the establishment felt threatened. One day it was foreign interference. One day it was campaign violations, all in an attempt to keep me from debating Carney and winning. I will continue to stand up for Canadians and fight for Canada. I don't know how, though. I don't know how, like what vehicle that looks like. She's not elected or anything like that. She's going to run for office, become a conservative, and then shove it down Mark Carney's throat. Maybe, who knows? Terry is highlighting this power in politics. They're saying, we went through Ruby Dhalla's social media and she wasn't really aligned with Justin Trudeau. So that doesn't work for us, dog. Here we go.
What do you make of this? I mean, this is the second candidate disqualified in a number of weeks. Chandra Arya, now Ruby Dhalla. We're waiting to hear more from her on the specifics of this, but what do you make of this development from the party?
Strangely, I feel a bit relieved. Some of my friends, Liberal friends, talking about the leadership, we found a lot of Ruby Dhalla's social media postings puzzling, to say the least. She was very anti-WEF, which is, based on a conspiracy theory, and you often hear it more on the conservative or the right side. She was pretty vicious in her attacks on Prime Minister Trudeau, on Mark Carney, and I'm used to that in any leadership race. There are some people that enter it and their intention is for attention. This felt a bit different. This is something that, we talked about, and whether or not you add fuel to the fire or attention by retweeting or calling it out. But there was a lot of head scratching going on. I worked on the Hill when Ruby Dhalla was an MP, and there were some problematic issues. Then a very well-known McLean story at the time. Not much had been heard from her. And when I scroll through her social media, again, there's the things that I just talked about that, did not seem helpful in terms of, where the Liberal Party is right now after 3 terms, trying to seek a 4th term. These are the same questions we would have been talking about had there been a leadership debate.
I don't think he's actually saying anything of substance here. He's just saying we went through her social media and she's not really aligned with us. And so, I'm relieved that we got rid of her. So that's weird in a democracy, right? He didn't like her, so he's happy they got rid of her. But the electorate liked her, right? The people who were signing up to vote liked her. Jim Murphy says, help me understand. Ruby Dhalla gets kicked out after paying $350,000 for financial concerns, and Mark Carney is the savior, even though he refuses to disclose his finances. Sounds about right, Liberal Party. So, yeah, they're the excuses and the elevation of Carney and ignoring his issues and the made-up pearl clutching over Ruby Dhalla's issues are very, very notable. It's very interesting to watch that. Table Salt says Mark Carney has 3 citizenships, but Ruby Dhalla is being questioned for foreign interference. As someone who was born in Winnipeg and whose platform is to deport, the Liberal Party is racist and sexist. And there's a whole bunch of this stuff going around, like talking about how sexist the Liberal Party is. There was a Peter Griffin, like qualified, not qualified, right? And so I thought it was maybe going to be in here, but there's a whole bunch of people talking about how racist the Liberal Party is at this point in time. And I don't disagree. I don't. Laurie Goldstein is talking about this. He says Canada in 2025, state-funded broadcasters participate in a political ambush of a candidate for the Liberal leadership based on a media leak by the Liberals the day after the Liberal government pitches increasing the state-funded broadcasters' budget. Ruby Dhalla learns on CBC's Power and Politics that she's been disqualified. In another era, we would have called this McCarthyism, regardless of whether the allegations of wrongdoing by the Dhalla campaign merit disqualifying her from the Liberal leadership race. The way it's been done is a chilling reminder of how our current Liberal government deals with perceived enemies. The CBC created the perception of bias, regardless of whether it actually existed, by seeming to boast about its scoop with the headline, Ruby Dhalla learns on CBC's Power and Politics she's been disqualified. Why did the Liberals inform the CBC before the candidate? Really? That's a good question. Why? Anti-Taxer says the Liberal Party bragged that 400,000 members joined the party. Then they removed Chandra Arya and Ruby Dhalla, who likely contributed to that number. Now they've made it incredibly inconvenient to register to vote in the race by forcing members to verify their identity with a cumbersome process through Canada Post. When people are discouraged by all of this, they'll fudge the numbers, and Mark Carney will get 300,000 votes in the first round to further launder his popularity, to sell it to Canadians that he should be recognized as a legitimate prime minister. This has Katie Telford and Gerald Butts written all over it. So with Ruby Dhalla and Chandra Arya out, we've got Frank Baylis, and Chrystia Freeland, or is Baylis out now too? I don't know if he's officially out, but he's not really a contender. I've seen even less from him than I have from Freeland. Freeland's trying, she's working out there, but I can't stand the woman, and neither can most Canadians. So I don't think it's going to work. But if you're the WEF and you're looking at who's going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, you've got Chrystia Freeland or her son's godfather, Mark Carney. Or the guy who had $250 million in, the ventilators that he got kickbacks for that they sold for scrap, right? Like either of them, all of them, fine, sure, says the WEF. And once we get the power, then they'll extend the elections, right? And like, if you don't think that's coming, I would love to be wrong about it. I would love to have the election in March or whatever. But again, our elections are rigged. We have 11 Chinese MPs who are placed and work for China. Dong, Ing, there's a couple others that have been identified. But, people who are at the beck and call of China, and that's not great. And we don't know who they are. And so an election, is that going to fix that? How about the electing another globalist party? Because they're all globalist parties, right? It's not likely we're going to elect the PPC. I'm sorry. It's just like the reality of the situation is probably that Mr. Bernier is not going to become the prime minister in the next election. It doesn't look like that. There are no polls that say that. So right? It's not responsible to say that. But all of the polls are pointing that Poilievre is going to be the next prime minister, but he's WEF too, right? He's a leader of a globalist party, and he says that he's not, but that's exactly what a WEF globalist would say, right? Like, I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope I am, but he says he's going to axe the tax. Everybody else said they were going to axe the tax too, right? All the liberals said, oh yeah, we're going to axe that tax, axe it. Ooh, axe it. And now they're like, we're going to, by axing it, you mean replacing it, right? Like that's what you do with an axe, you replace things with it. So that's what they mean. And maybe Mr. Poilievre means the same. Maybe he's going to replace the tax, axe the tax, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same, right? Oh, what's language, but the interpretation. So we're in a situation where I think we're going to elect a globalist anyway, no matter what we do. So that kind of sucks. Sean says one of the excuses they got rid of Ruby was that she had a donation from multiple people who apparently use the same credit card. And freedom of speech, freedom of goose says Mark Carney funds. I found a few donations that would fall under the suspicious category. So there are donations from the UK and the United States from Mark Carney to the Liberal Party or from not Mark Carney to Mark Carney's campaign. This is from husband and wife, I guess, or no, same thing. Oh yeah, Francis and Valeria. So Frank and Valerie, right? Husband and wife, but it's the same credit card, right? And so I guess Lori and Sean, there's duplicates, and it's the same thing that they use for one of the excuses of getting rid of Ruby Dhalla, but apparently Carney's engaging in it too. Naya says M. Brandt finds that it's not just Ruby who has multiple donations from the same postal code, but also Mark Carney. Did you see a smear campaign against Carney for these reasons? Did they boot Carney from the race? No. Shocking. You can't hate the corrupt Liberal Party enough, and they are corrupt, and that's what's going on, unfortunately. Andy Lee says, how did these donors pay the Carney campaign? Were the appropriate attestation papers filed? Right, so Ruby Dhalla has to get attestation papers. Mark Carney doesn't. Same kind of issue, right? You've got people who are using the same postal code and double donations, right? But it's husband and wife, and it makes perfect sense unless you're Ruby Dhalla, right? That's foreign interference if you're Ruby Dhalla. Weird, right? Super duper weird. Here's Canada Record. They say it is curious, don't you think, that Mark Carney's wife owns a corporation that has its address and her address as Suite 321 in a UPS store in Etobicoke, because everyone knows a registered office can't be a PO box. So there you go. It's a virtual office, right? It's totally definitely an office. Suite 321, right? It's just behind the UPS store. Sure. That the implication is it's actually a PO box, right? They're saying that it's more fly by night than it seems. Andy Lee says, meet Mark Carney's donors, Elections Canada. So Andy Lee was asking about this guy, which person, finding these kind of donations, and they go through it as well. So this is just more sauce on that kind of stuff if you're interested. Link is in the description. Anti-Taxer has Michelle Rempel-Garner talking about this, and she says Anti-Taxer says, if the Liberal Party had any sense of morality or decency, they would have disqualified Mark Carney as Liberal leadership candidate. Actually, I think that Michelle Rempel says that. So here's Michelle Rempel talking about Mark Carney and the concerns about an above-board race.
Does Mark Carney still hold any stake in strife? Now, just to explain the loophole that I've mentioned. Under Canada's Conflict of Interest Act, public office holders have 60 days to file disclosures and 120 days to finalize them after assuming office. If Carney wins the leadership and then quickly calls an election, it's conceivable that he wouldn't have to disclose his financial interests, such as the one in strife, until after an election. And again, this is a situation that the law didn't anticipate. An unelected person who had significant corporate board interests becoming prime minister and then not disclosing his interests ahead of a federal election. Does Mark Carney still hold any stake in strife?
So there you go. It's interesting because we're not going to know what his financial position is, and he has been benefiting from being orbiting government the last 5 years. And so that is going to cast a very interesting light on the whole thing. And if we immediately go into an election, he's got 60 days from assuming office. So like if we go directly into an election, elections are 35 days. So we're not going to have any kind of disclosure. It's going to be really, really interesting. And the Ontario election is in 5 days. Holy smokeronies. Greg and Randy Hillier got together and did a song. I heard about it, but I haven't seen the song yet. So crazy stuff. I think it's on Randy Hillier's X. I haven't seen it though. I haven't come across it. Apologies. I just heard about it as I was starting up the show today, and I didn't go get the link, so apologies. Canada Proud says Chi Lee, who is currently under an RCMP investigation for allegedly operating 2 undercover communist Chinese police stations in Quebec, was awarded the King Charles III Coronation Medal by Governor General Mary Simon for her significant contribution to Canada. So that RCMP investigation aside, Chi, we like you here in Canada, says the Governor General. Weird, right? Lots of people under RCMP investigation getting medals of recognition from King Charles. Weird. It's just weird, right? Don't you think? Let's do our grab bag of governance, because that's always fun. Candace Malcolm is talking about funding for residential schools. And she says Ottawa to cease funding residential schools, unmarked grave searches. And the reason is they haven't found any remains. And I've already told you that, but here's the official news from Juno News. It's a weird rebrand. It's a very strange rebrand. Wall Street Mav says Delta CEO Ed B refuses to identify the pilot of the doomed plane amid rumors it was an all-female crew. Right? Like, that's kind of a... So, further, I think that... I heard that they're giving $30,000 to everybody who was involved in the whole thing. And if you've been watching Landman, you understand the strategy here. Pay them off first, get a signature that says they're not going to sue you later, and then you understand, then you have an idea of how much this disaster is going to cost you, right? $30,000 per passenger times 80 passengers. You know, my brother was outraged by this number. He was like, $30,000? He's like, you can get more if you get into a bad car accident. He's like, ridiculous. A plane crash and they're offering you $30,000? Nope. He said, I wouldn't take it. He said, I would absolutely like tell them where to go with their $30,000. And so... very interesting stuff. He wasn't a passenger. He was just outraged. Juno News says, Prince Edward Island Premier Dennis King has announced his surprise resignation, stepping down as both the province's leader and head of the Progressive Conservative Party, effective at Friday at noon. So, new premier, and will they be an unelected premier, or is the Progressive Conservative Party in PEI going to appoint somebody? Is there a deputy premier who's going to step in? Like, I really don't know. I don't know much about the legislature in PEI. It's kind of a quiet, you don't hear much about it, right? So every so often there's tolls to get in and out of PEI, but other than that, you don't hear much. So I didn't even know. If somebody said, quick, which province is Dennis King the premier of? I wouldn't be able to answer. I'd be like, oh, well, maybe by process of elimination, but I think I'd guess Northwest Territories, and they'd say, that's not even a province, that's a territory. So anyway, ridiculous, right? So Mr. King is out. We'll have to see who the next leader of PEI is, the next premier. The food professor is talking about the egg situation, and the egg situation is out of control in the United States, he says. He says the egg situation in the United States is out of control. Restaurants are not only adding a surcharge for eggs, others are redesigning dishes and menus to incorporate alternative ingredients. In Canada, the situation remains stable, but still precarious, right? So that's, wild, right? I had no idea that the egg situation in Canada was being kept stable by anything other than, I guess we don't have a lot of bird flu yet. Like, I feel like it's coming here. And so what's going on in the United States is they're culling a lot of birds, and this is impacting the egg production. And that means that there's not enough eggs and the egg prices are skyrocketing. And this has been happening for a few years now. Although it's been getting worse in the last 6 months to a month. And so it's one of those things that I've been kind of paying attention to. And so here's what's going on in Mexico. This woman is living in Mexico. She lives 6 months in Mexico and 6 months in the United States, I guess. And so here she is talking about the egg situation in Mexico.
All I see Americans talking about these days is the price of eggs. So let's see what the price of eggs is in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. If you've never seen me before, my name's Meredith. I'm exploring life outside the United States. I'm a widowed mom spending 6 months in Playa del Carmen, Mexico with my 7-year-old son. I made it to the eggs. You're probably going to be pissed. You may want to scroll away. you're going to be real pissed, guys. Eggs on eggs on eggs on eggs. Okay, so for a dozen pasteurized eggs, that works out to $2 American. These ones right here, definitely some sort of organic eggs, and that's less than $3. And those are just the pasteurized eggs. Wait till you see the rest of the eggs. Most eggs in Mexico.
So there you go. It's eggs galore, and it's different policies. We have supply management in Canada, and I believe that covers eggs. And so there's going to be more controls on it. But I thought that it would give them more control and ability to shut down farms. But who knows? And in Mexico, I guess there's no supply management and no bird flu or no infrastructure to enforce any kind of bird flu shutdowns, lockdowns, or anything like that. Although, again, I don't know enough about Mexico, so take that with a grain of salt. They have eggs, so I'm assuming that there's no infrastructure, but maybe there is a strong infrastructure and there's just no reason for them to shut down. So why, the question comes back to, why is the United States being so impacted and everywhere else is not? And I don't know. It seems the policies in the United States lend themselves to have a robust amount of eggs being available, but right now there is not, and it's increasing the price. And is it bird flu? Is it something else? Who knows? But I don't want it to come here. This is kind of the state of Canada, and this is a homeless man in Edmonton, minus 35, keeping himself warm with a fire in a bus shelter. That's terrible, right? This is Canada. And Just Bins says, tragic footage of a homeless person in Regina surviving the night in minus 35 wind chill with a fire at a bus stop. Canada's neighborhoods are turning into hoods, and the hoods are turning into ghettos, or slums. And that's concerning. Like that's not very good at all. That's very bad for our country, and we should do everything we can to stop it. Man, this is impactful. So I watched this. This is Del Bigtree's urgent warning on the hepatitis B vaccine. The hepatitis B vaccine is coming in Ontario. It's given to people in grade 7. So it is part of our vaccine schedule. Bigtree goes through, at about 5 minutes, he talks about the insert that's put into the vaccines. All vaccines have this insert, and the insert talks about potential side effects. One of the potential side effects of the Hep B vaccine, which is given in the United States to infants, 1-day-old babies, or 0-day-old babies, I think is what he says, first-day babies, is brain inflammation or swelling of the brain. One of the potential outcomes of a brain swell is autism. And he gets very upset, and he says, okay, so what kind of safety trials did you do on these vaccines to see if these things happened with the test population? And so what they did, the safety trial they did, according to Dale Bigtree, and I believe that he's not lying, it's a 10-minute video, so I'm trying to summarize, is followed the children for 5 days after vaccination. So they vaccinated them and followed them for 5 days, and then that was that. That's the 142 kids. That's it. That was the safety trial done on the Hep B vaccine. And I think that that's absolutely friggin' bonkers. And especially in the context of, I don't know how many people could potentially get a brain swell, but he makes the case in the presentation that the vaccine is designed to cause inflammation. They load the vaccine with heavy metals in order to cause an immune response. So if, he says, you're unfortunate enough to have your immune response happen in the brain, well, you could be one of the people who has autism. And so is that safe or is it not safe? And he says, like, you can sit in two places. You can sit in one of two places. Either it's real, but it's rare, and I don't care about those babies. They don't matter. The greater good is all that matters. Or you're going to live in a completely blind place, which is it doesn't matter that that's written on every single one of these things. So it's interesting, like, not to say that I didn't care before, but I was of the uninformed masses, I guess, who didn't understand the direct correlation of all of these things. And I mean, I've been waking up since 2020, but this is an order of magnitude worse than I thought, right? And I think that there are a lot of people who are kind of on the fence about it. And I think hearing this, it's so big that I can't even play a minute of it, because if I play a minute of it, I'll have to play 2. If I play 2, I'll play 4. If I play 4, I'll play 7. And if I play 7, I might as well play the whole 10. So go watch it. It's very interesting, worth your time, absolutely. And if you're on the fence, I think it's probably decisive. It pushed me further off the fence than I already was. Like I was off the fence, but if people had an argument like, oh, I think blah is okay because of blah, I would maybe give it credence. I would still give it credence, right? Like you have to examine new information. But at the same time, I think I'm more firm in my belief that what we've done is poison a whole lot of people for no good reason whatsoever under the guise of for your health, comrade. And that's like, hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to canadapoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for shop and donate and look for subscriptions and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful